What is access specifier? So you need to mention what are the access specifier that we have in a class. Which are those? We have private, public and we have a protected. Those are the three access specifier that will come under the class. Whatever the variables that I am going to declare inside a class will be considered as what? Data members. How we are going to define the member function outside a class definition? So to define the member function outside a class declaration, so you must link the class name of a class with the name of a member function. Hello everybody, a warm welcome to one and all. I welcome you all to the revision class on chapter 7, that is classes and objects. I am Rohini TS, lecturer, Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. So in this session of this classes and object, first we'll see about the marks distribution. So as you can see here in the chapter 7, that is classes and objects, you are going to get 2 questions that is for 1 marks. So that means what? You are going to get 2 questions in the 1 marks. Totally it will be for 2 marks then. Okay. 1 mark, 2 questions you are going to get, and then no 2 marks question, no 3 mark question, and you need to take care about the 5 mark 1 question. So that will be for 5 marks. Totally you are going to get 3 questions and totally it will be for 7 marks. 5 marks 1 question, 1 marks 2 question. So that it will be 5 plus 2. So totally it will be of 7 marks. We'll see the important questions and most frequently asked 1 mark question from this chapter called classes and objects. We'll see the first question. What is class? It is a fundamental question, like if you are dealing with the classes and object, first you have to understand what do you mean by class and what do you mean by object. So now we'll see the first question, that is regarding what is class. So what is class then? Already we have discussed in the concept class, isn't it? So when it comes to the class, it is a collection of an object. It is a collection of object that will going to have a identical properties and it has a common behavior and it has a shared relationship. Or else you can also write class is a collection of object, and also class is a user defined data type. Class is a template. So those many definitions that we have for a class. So most frequently asked question is what is class? We'll see the second question. What is the use of scope resolution operator? Double colon. What is that? Why we are going to use that scope resolution operator? To define the member function outside the class definition. For that purpose, we are going to have this scope resolution operator. So that this is used to define the member function outside the class definition. Remember, you are not supposed to leave the keyword called outside. Okay, so you have to mention we are going to use the scope resolution operator to define the member function outside the class definition. That is the answer for the second question. And what is the use of member function in a class? If I consider a class, we have a data members and we have a member function, isn't it? So in the data members, those are the variable and member functions are the functions which we are going to have in a class. Then what is the use of it? They are not asking you the definition. They are asking you what is the use of having this member function in a class. Then why we are going to use this member function in a class? In order to access a private data of a class. Because as we all know that we can't access the private data outside a class. If I wanted to access the private data, then it is mandatory to have this member function in a class. So that in order to access the private data of a class, we are going to have this member function in a class. Next, mention the access specifiers with respect to the class, where they are not asking you what is access specifier. So you need to mention what are the access specifier that we have in a class. Which are those? We have private, public and we have a protected. Those are the 3 access specifier that will come under the class. Next, which operator is used to access member function of a class? Which operator we are going to use in order to access the members of a class? That can be either data member or a member function. Which operator we are going to use? That is dot operator. Don't forget this. It is most frequently asked question. They might ask you the question like what is the use of dot operator as well as what is the use of scope resolution operator. Scope resolution is used to define the member function outside the class definition, and this dot operator is used to access the members of a class. That members are nothing but data member or member function. Next, we'll see the next question. Write an example to show how array can be used as an object. As you all know that how to create an object, I need to take a name of a class. Let me consider I have to take a class name. Then I need to take a object name. Then semicolon. Then when we are dealing or when I wanted to have an array as a object of a class, at that time first I need to specify the name of a class. What is that? I am taking an employee as a class name here and I am creating one object called supervisor. So how we are going to declare an object of a type called array? So we are going to specify the data type, the name of an array, within square bracket we are going to have a size of a array. That means the number of elements in an array. In the same way, here the supervisor is a name of an array object and the employee is a class. That class is a user defined data type and its size is 3, so that I can store 3 supervisor values or their information in this object called supervisor. So here you can take any of the other example also. So you can take like student S of 50. So here student is the name of a class, S is the array object and 50 is the size of that array of object. Next question, how to declare an object in a program? As I told you here, how we are going to create an object. So, class name, object 1, object 2, up to object n. Is there any restriction of having number of objects? Obviously, no. So, we can have any number of object. And here you have to observe one thing. This class keyword is not so mandatory. It is optional. Like if you wanted to have it, you can have. If you don't wanted to have it, you don't need to take that class keyword before the class name. Okay. So class name you have to specify. Then you can take any number of object. Each object should be separated by comma. At last, don't forget to put the semicolon. Next question, write the significance of dot operator in a classes and object. Already we have discussed regarding this dot operator. So what is the use of having this? In order to access the members of a class. That members can be either data member or a member function used to access the member function and data members of a class. We'll see the next question. What is meant by array of object? So if an array having a class type elements, then that will be considered as array of object. This is the example for array of object. So if an array having the class type element, then that will be considered as what? Array of object. So that an array having a class type elements is considered as array of object. Next question, how do you define the member function outside a class? How do you define? Like you can consider in a two way. Like how do you define a member function outside a class? With the help of scope resolution operator, or else you can write the syntax. So you can take two answers here. One is what? Syntax. How we are going to define a member function outside a class? I need to specify a return type. I need to specify a name of a class. Then scope resolution operator. Then I need to specify the member function which I wanted to define it outside a class. Then with the within the parenthesis, if there is any argument or a parameter that I can specify, then that function can have its function body. Or else what you can write? How do you define the member function outside a class? With the help of scope resolution operator. With the help of scope resolution operator. Or else directly you write the syntax in order to define the member function outside the class definition. We'll see the next question. What is data member and what is member function? Most frequently asked question from this chapter. Anyway, you are going to get 2 questions for 1 mark, right? So you are going to have 2 questions in the part A. So you need to concentrate on all the possibilities of having this 1 mark questions. So what is data member here? As we all know that class comprises of data member and member function. So whatever the variables that I am going to declare inside a class will be considered as what? Data member. So the variables which is declared inside a class is considered as data members. Then what about this member function? A function declared as a member of a class is considered as a member function. If I am considering any function as a member of a class, then that will be considered as what? Member function. These are the number of questions that I have listed out, which is most frequently asked in the previous year question paper. So you can have a look over it and it will be easy for you in order to face the 1 mark question from the chapter 7 classes and object. It's all about 1 mark question. We'll see the next question. Is it possible to access the data outside a class? Yes or no question it is. Like, is it possible to access the data outside a class? Yes. How can I say yes for this question? We can access the data outside a class if it is declared under a public section. So that S is the answer for this question. What is the use of access specifier? Why we are going to use this access specifier? We have private, public and protected. What is the use of having it? So access specifiers are used to define the scope of a data, whether it is publicly available, privately available or whether it is protected. In order to get to know the scope of the data, we are going to have this access specifier. It's all about 1 mark question. Anyway, you are going to get 2 questions in the part A. So then it will be easy for you in order to face the 1 mark question in the chapter 7 called classes and objects. It's all about 1 mark question. Let me move to the part D, that is related to what? 5 marks question. We'll see the part D, that is 5 mark question part here. Explain the class definition with syntax and example. I just wanted to tell you one thing regarding this 5 mark question. When it comes to the classes and object, what are the things that you are supposed to remember from this chapter? First, you have to understand what is class, right? So, how we are going to declare a class? Class declaration and definition. Along with that, you have to take care about what is data member and what is member function. In the member function, whether it is defined inside a class or it is outside a class. These are the only possibility of getting a 5 mark question from this chapter. So, only 3 important questions are there in the 5 marks. One is class declaration and definition, and whether we have a member function either inside a class or outside the class definition. That is what you have to learn along with the syntax and example. We'll see the first question here. Explain the class definition with a syntax and example, or else it can be a question like, what is class? Write the syntax and example for class declaration. So then, how we are supposed to write for this? So you have to write the syntax. How to write the syntax? We have a class keyword and I need to give a name for a class. Within that, I have a data members and member function, and I have a 3 access specifier, which is private, public and protected. Under each of the access specifier, we have a data member and member function as well. And how we are going to close a class? Main thing, we are going to close a class or end a class scope by closing of flat braces with semicolon. So after writing the syntax, what you are supposed to do? You have to explain each keyword here. What classes mean, what you mean by class user defined name, what is the private, public and protected belongs to, what do you mean by data member, what is member function, how to close a class, that and all you have to explain in order to get 5 marks when it comes here. So class definition is a process of naming a class and data variables and interface operation of the class. When we are defining a class, we are going to give what do you mean by class, like what is the name of a class, what are the data members I have, what are the member function I have, that we are going to define in the class definition. And also we have to take care about what you mean by data member and what you mean by member function. Then what does this class declaration specifies? So that specifies the representation of an object of the class and set of operations that can be applied to such objects. So when we are going to create an object and that objects will going to access the content of a data members and member function will be in the class declaration specification. So after the syntax, you need to explain each keyword. What is this class is used to declare a class, and user defined name is the name of a class. Then what class body that comprises of opening and closing of flat braces, and end must be of closing of flat braces with semicolon. And what we have 3 kinds of access specifier, that includes private, public as well as the protected. And you can see one of the example. So I have a class called account and it has 4 data members, right? So it has 4 data members under the scope of access specifier private. So it has account number, name, account type and balance amount. These are the data members of my class called account, and it has 2 member function. One is get data and another one is display data. So here we are closing a class with closing of flat braces with semicolon. This is how we are supposed to answer for this question. We'll see the second question. What are access specifiers? Explain any two with example. So if I say what is access specifier, that specifies the scope of a data, whether it is public, private or protected. Then it will be your choice to select any one of those two. Like you have to select any two out of three, then you have to explain along with an example. So here examples are nothing but what how we are going to use a private. So if I am not specifying any of the data access specifier, by default it will be private in nature. So private colon int x comma y. So that is how we are going to give the example. In the same way, here access specifier, we have a data members and member function of a class. All this needs to be specified under certain levels of access specifier, whether it is public, private or protected, so that they help in controlling the access of a data members. Mainly it is somehow providing a security for the data members and a member function of a class. So we have three kinds of access specifier: public, private as well as the protected. So I am taking private. So in this private, how we are going to use this private access specifier, whatever the data members and member function which comes under the private access specifier. So when we are working under this access specifier called private, so member data can only be accessed by the class member function or a friend function. Whatever the member that we have declared under the private can be accessed only by the member function or a friend function. And you have to write some more points regarding this private access specifier, and this is how we are going to give the example: private colon text, and we have a float y. These are the two data members of a which comes under the scope of this access specifier called private. So these two can't be accessed outside a class, and it can be accessed only by the members of a class or else by the friend function. Same thing will going to be specified with this protected specifier or a protected access specifier. Whatever the members that I am going to declare under the scope of this protected can only be accessed only by the member function, friend of a class, and also the member function which is derived from this class. And we cannot access, the members cannot be accessed from outside the class if it is declared under a scope of protected. In the same way as of the private, you can take like this, like protected colon, then you can take int x comma y. So these two data members which comes under the scope of protected. So next we have a public. So as the name indicates, public in the sense members can be accessed by any function even inside or outside the class. So whatever the members that I am going to declare under the scope of this public can be accessed anywhere in a program. This is the example in order to take any variables or a data members or a member function under the scope of this public access specifier. This is how you are supposed to answer in order to get 5 marks. We'll see the next question. What are member function in a class? Write any 4 characteristics of a member function. So we are dealing with 5 mark question. So you have to understand. So in any number of question, like whether it is for 2 marks, 3 marks or a 5 mark question, you have to understand if any question with a question mark, that will be for 1 marks, and remaining question will be for remaining marks. For example, if it is 2 marks, any question with question mark, 1 mark. Remaining question will be for 1 mark. So for 3 marks, any question with question mark, 1 mark. Remaining question will be for 2 marks. In that way, you have to analyze marks distribution, then you have to answer. So what is member function in a class? 1 marks. And if I have written any 4 characteristics, then that will be for 4 marks. So as we all know that a function which is declared as a member of a class will be considered as a member function. Here I have listed out the characteristics of the member function. So you have to write all the 4 points in order to get 5 marks. So it will be what we are going to use a scope resolution operator in order to define it outside a class definition, and several classes can use the same function name, membership, label. So it will going to resolve their scope. And also this member function can access private data of a class and non-member function cannot. That is what the main usage of having this member function. We can have access to the private data of a class, and also the type and number of arguments in a member function must be same as the types and numbers of data which is declared in a class definition. So these are the characteristics that we have in the member function, whether it can be either inside or outside the class definition. Most of the time these characteristics will be followed for outside a class definition. We'll see the next question. Explain member function outside a class definition. Give an example. So, example will going to be carried for 2 marks and explanation will be for 3 marks. So, outside a class definition, how we are going to define the member function outside a class definition? So, to define the member function outside a class declaration, so you must link the class name of a class with the name of a member function. In the syntax, we are going to have a name of a class. Along with that, we are going to mention this member function belongs to which class. So, which will going to bind that relationship, that is with the help of this scope resolution operators. And also we can do this by preceding the function name with a class name which is followed by 2 colons, that we are going to learn in the syntax part. And the scope resolution is mainly used in order to define the member function outside a class definition. Here you can see the syntax. In order to define the member function outside a class, it has a return type and we need to specify a name of a class and scope resolution operator that specify we are defining this member function outside the class definition. This is binding a relationship between this member function and a name of a class. That means this member function is a member of this class, that is giving it a relationship by the scope resolution operator. So, if you wanted to have any of the arguments or a parameter to the member function, you can have it and it will going to have a function body. And here you can see one of the example here. We have a class called operation and it has 2 data members int a comma b. Int is a data type, a and b are the 2 data members under the scope called private, and we have 2 member function. What is that? Sum and product. We are declaring it inside a class definition. If I wanted to define it outside a class definition, I have to use this syntax. What is that? Return type. What is the return type I have here? Int. What is the name of a class? That is operation. Then what we have here? Scope resolution operator. Then what is the member function name? That is sum. So when we are having a body of a function, it should not be terminated by semicolon. How we are going to find a sum? By adding a and b value. Then in the same way, we have a same thing for product. So int operation scope resolution product. How we are going to find a product? A into b. Then we are going to close the scope of this product member function. This is how we are going to define the member function outside a class definition. And whatever the character that you have written for a member function can also be right for this answer also. This is how we are supposed to answer. Don't forget to read regarding this inside a class definition and outside a class definition, and class declaration and definition, and access specifier with any one of the access specifier with example. This is the only content that you are supposed to learn from this chapter 7, that is classes and objects. It's all about today's session. I hope you all understood. Let me meet you in the next session with the revision classes. Until that, keep learning, keep on growing. Thank you.